The Great March of Return is still going on. Every Friday, tens of thousands of people are still going to the border fence. Actually, it's not border fence, it's just a prison fence separating Gazans from their actual homes that they were expelled from violently decades ago. So 20,000 people came out this last Friday, a few hundred meters away from the prison fence. Of course, Israeli forces opened fire on the group again, like they do every single week. This time they killed at least 2 people and wounded over 270, 40 with live ammo, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. So just to sum it up, more than 170 unarmed Palestinians have been killed just since the Great March of Return. Man. We mentioned this in the last podcast, but Wikipedia's Jimmy Wales, this kind of unabashed pro-Israel, pro-apartheid guy who runs Wikipedia, demanded Corbyn to respond to those rockets firing from Gaza. Those rockets were in the midst of Israel repeatedly bombing the Gaza Strip. In these bombing strikes, they killed 3 overnight, including a pregnant woman and her 18-month-old baby daughter. So where's Jimmy Wales demanding any sort of accountability for that?
Jesus Christ.
It's disgusting, dude. And then you have Israel's Ministry of Defense releasing these images of its sea barrier. We've talked about before, Gaza seems to be one of the only regions in the entire world where you literally can't even flee via boat if you are a refugee, because you'll get executed or assassinated by Israeli forces. So you actually get punished. They have like a naval blockade already that if fishermen get regularly shot for just going too far. So this giant sea barrier is just getting added to the barrier that already exists, but it's going to further blockade the besieged strip. And it's going to consist of 3 security layers: an underwater base, a 50-meter wide sea level platform made out of armored stone, and on top of that, a 6-meter high barbed wire fence for an additional security measure. So it's just Israel being like, yep, we're really excited about preventing Hamas terrorist attacks from reaching the homeland. Meanwhile, you have people like Avi Meir posting videos of people screaming when the rockets were being launched, from the settlement that's literally built next to Gaza. This is the settlement Sederot, I think. They cheer on the bombing. In this one Guardian article I read that was like very milquetoast, at the very end of it, they were like, yeah, like they kept saying, are you leftists, to Guardian reporters who were just there reporting on it. And they said that it got super tense and like really crazy, and they just had to flee because these people on the Hill all of a sudden were like, are you leftists? Like, who are you? How they do when they don't want people to be recording what's going on. So it's the whole death to leftists, death to Arabs, death to the videographers. So this is the settlement that's there. And then you have Robert Mackey, the biggest fucking lackey douche who works for the Intercept, oddly enough. He released an article the other day basically absolving the Israeli military from killing those 4 little boys on the Gaza beach back in 2014.
It was a mistake, he said
it was a tragic mistake and that they were killed by drones that thought they were chasing Hamas militants. So Mackey the lackey here clearly just regurgitates an IDF press release that he was handed by someone within the IDF. I mean, making it seem like it was this giant scoop, that a secret Israeli report reveals how these boys were really killed. But unfortunately what he does, again, just repeating just sheer IDF propaganda. So 90% of the article is literally just repeating IDF propaganda over and over and over again, making it seem like the IDF doesn't intentionally kill children on a near daily basis. We're talking about dozens of kids who have been literally assassinated via Israeli snipers. Again, they are putting these children through the scopes of these sniper rifles and taking the shot. That's happening, and we already know that that's also being confirmed by generals. They have to confirm every kill with higher-ups, and they've talked about this over and over again. I'm skeptical of this. I'm really skeptical of this. I mean, how could you not know these very basic facts? And not to mention that over 500 kids during 2014, during just that summer assault on the Gaza Strip, were murdered by Israeli forces. So, at the very end of this article, he just throws in something from the Bakr boys' family saying they don't believe the Israeli military. Yeah, no fucking shit. So why do you, Mackey? God, he's just so awful. Just every time the U.S. Intelligence community or Israeli intelligence community just wants to throw out some propaganda, you can really depend on Robert Mackey from the Intercept to just repeat it. Just having a platform right there for the U.S. government and its allies to foment and foster whatever the hell they want. So good job, Robert. You fucking shill. The Israeli military had already cleared itself of culpability. They already called this a tragic mistake when they investigated themselves back in 2015. So the story really isn't new. It just seems like they wanted to just absolve them and be like, yeah, it was via drone, and making it seem like the drone thing is such a big story. Palestinians in Gaza know that drones are being used. This has been a known thing for a very long time. There's drones constantly flying overhead all throughout the Gaza Strip. And they use the Gaza Strip as a testing ground for all of this military equipment. Just new military equipment and technology. We know that Israel is one of the leading arms manufacturers in the world, and they constantly use the besieged Gaza Strip to test these products. They even use them at arms expos and say, tested and battle approved, for just bombing relentlessly the Gaza Strip with this shit. This is not new. The Israeli military has already absolved itself, but good job, Robert, for following up and also just, making it seem like they're even further absolved and making it seem like they actually don't want to kill children, which they actually do.
It's fucking insane. It's really, really
and the Intercept just
crazy.
prints it.
I mean,
yeah,
it's just insane that this just keeps happening and the world just keeps turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about these protests anymore. It's like, I'm sorry, is this ongoing massacre of unarmed protesters not newsworthy anymore? Like, even leftist media is just like kind of ignoring the fact that this is continuing on a weekly basis and just the bodies keep piling up.
Haaretz just reported that, actually, just so I make sure I don't get this wrong, it's the Hebrew version, so I don't know, the translation might not be perfect, but apparently there's a Hebrew article going in Haaretz right now saying that the bombing of Gaza civilians is because of a collective punishment. It's done punitively on purpose. So
yes,
that's widely known to people like me and Abby. That's been known for a long time. For some reason, a lot of people don't. They seem unwilling to believe this type of stuff happens, that the Israeli government's willing to just murder civilians as punishment. But this is clearly happening, and you really should look into it and stop believing in IDF propaganda.
Yeah, it's the same belief, that basic belief that Israel has good intentions, just like America has good intentions. So just our allies all have good intentions, and Hamas must be instigating all of this. Yeah. And Israel only responds when provoked. That's literally this conventional wisdom that is just so false, but it's stuck. And I don't know why, especially given what is coming out on a daily basis about Israel. It's really hard to hide the facts and the truth, even if you are just ingesting mainstream media.
It is, yeah. Well, as Krauthammer said, he was mad at the IDF during the 50-day war. He was mad at the IDF during that time period because they were telegenically killing Palestinians. And that's why he was mad. So there's a certain tipping point, where it's like they can't hide this stuff from the rest of the world, but it seems like they don't even give a fuck. And it's really, really disturbing when you think that they don't even care that people know they're murdering civilians as a punitive measure. That's how brazen they are.
Krauthammer was not telegenic at all. So Ronnie Barkin is an amazing Israeli-born anti-Zionist activist. He is living in the heart of apartheid. He is an excellent commentator. I encourage everyone to follow his Twitter and support his work. He did a really good thread that I'm going to post on the timeline just about what we're missing about that Jewish nation-state law that was just passed that are really noteworthy. He goes on to say, this nation-state law, it didn't just sanction discrimination. He said that's just a byproduct of it. Yes, it's definitely racist. He said that's not the issue as well. He said, and also the downgrading the status of Arabic as no longer the official language is really crazy. He said, but that's not necessarily what the crux of this is either. He said there's one reason why this law is so needed by the right-wing government, and that reason lays bare the only difference that exists between the right wing and the left, because he always calls out the left as just as racist and supremacist, but implicitly so. And he says, Article 1C of the law states the following: the realization of the right to national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to the Jewish people, and that's what this law is about. So he says, while the so-called left in Israel, the implicit supremacists, desperately need to establish this kind of faux notion of a Palestinian state, or this faux notion of autonomy on the Palestinians in order to maintain their cherished, racially pure state by separating from as many Palestinians as possible, the right wing, the explicit supremacists, have it much easier. all that the honest supremacists need is to make sure that no matter what the demographics look like, they and only they will continue to be the masters of the land. He's saying that this framework gives the rights of the master race, the ethnic group, enshrining with this legal distinction which puts in place for the very purpose between national and citizenship rights. He says the Jewish nation-state bill simply says we do not need to care about demographics any longer once our basic law determines that we are the only masters of the entire land. So, yeah, it is interesting that people are like, this is only about downgrading the language and stuff like that. But he said this is just another way to further enshrine themselves without needing to worry about semantics. Further cementing apartheid, further cementing discrimination. Ronnie Barkin's great. Definitely Miko Pilat is another voice, Israeli born to follow on these matters.